A very warm good afternoon to all of you. I'm indeed thankful to ET Now and the Times Network for inviting me to address all of you here on this very important theme of the role of higher education in achieving the vision of Viksit Bharat. Viksit Bharat has been often quantitatively defined as becoming a $30 trillion economy by 2047, the year in which we celebrate 100 years of our independence. And hence, it's important to underscore something which the Honorable Finance Minister mentioned in her budget. She quoted the Telugu poet Gurjada Appa Rao and said, "Deshamante matti kaadu, deshamante manushuloy," which means that a nation is not just its land, a nation is its people. I know I'm talking to a business audience, a management audience, a corporate audience, and hence here's the pitch for you. Of the 6 M's of management, money, machine, minutes, materials, and methods, it is M, the 6th M, men or human beings, which are most important, because it is they who give value to the other 5. And to nurture these human beings is the very core requirement to achieve the vision of Viksit Bharat. People in a Viksit Bharat, or to achieve Viksit Bharat, will be our core assets. And it is very important, hence, that the role of education, especially higher education, be understood in achieving this vision, in proceeding in this journey that we are also very excited about. But this is an enormous task. To create top quality, world-ready human capital is indeed an onerous task. And hence, let me present before you several nuances which academia and industry will need to work together in order to reach where we collectively wish to reach as a nation. First of all, let me highlight the enormity of our demography. 50% of India's population is below the age of 25 years. That means we have 70 crore people below the age of 25, which is the population of continental Europe. Of these, about 15 crore are between the age of 18 to 23, which is typically the age of higher education as is often defined. And the remaining 15 to 20 odd crores will be entering the portals of higher education's ecosystem in the next 20 years. As per UNESCO, this will be the largest number of students going through higher education in India ever since records began. That's the kind of scale we are looking at with respect to higher education. I would also like to highlight the fact that we are enjoying a demographic dividend. 68% of our population, 100 crore people, are going to be in the working age group for the next quarter century. This is larger than Africa, this is larger than China, this is larger than South America. That's the kind of human power India will enjoy consistently for the next quarter century. And hence, to equip this population, as I said, of the size of continental Europe, and to make them able and noble to achieve the vision of Viksit Bharat, higher education and higher education institutions will have to play a very important role. And in this context, let me mention that the National Education Policy 2020, which was released in 2020, about 5 years back, identified 3 core pillars on which this 25-year-long journey will be traversed: access, quality, and future readiness. Let me throw light on each of these so that you understand how each of these will feed into the larger picture, and also what role corporations, industry, the private sector can play in order to empower higher education, because higher education ecosystem is providing the resources which are going to eventually be absorbed by the corporate houses. And hence, it is very important that a role is played by the industry, by the private sector in creating such top-class talent. Let me begin with the first point on access. I think the very first aspect of access is expansion. Our gross enrollment ratio in higher education is about 28%. And this is expected to rise to 50% by 2035. That means we would be nearly doubling the number of students in higher education from about 4.3 crores to over 8 crores in just about a decade. That means 4 crore new students will be entering the higher education ecosystem, and hence expansion is a very vital priority of higher education in the next 2 to 3 decades. Let me share with you that we've done phenomenally well in the last 75 years. From just 20 universities in 1950, we've now expanded to 1,200 universities. And from 2 lakh students in 1950, we have now expanded to 4.3 crore students. That's almost a 225 times growth of students in 75 years. In the last 10 years alone, we had 1 university and 2 colleges establishing base in India every week. And it is heartening to note that our gender parity index is 1.01, which means that there are more women than men studying in India's higher education ecosystem. Interestingly, the number of women in STEM education has gone up 3 times, from 14% to 47% in just 10 years. So we've done exceedingly well on the expansion side, but a lot more needs to be done, as by 2035, we will have over 8 crore students in higher education, which is equal to the population of Germany. And that will also make India the largest higher education ecosystem in the world. So all hands on the deck strategy is required for this expansion. Second, inclusion. Very vital part of access is inclusion. Even today, education, including higher education, is a public and a social good in India. While an annual higher education fee in the US is about $30,000, in India, even among some of the best institutions, it costs 1/10, $3,000. Which means that most of the students coming out of such institutions are able to repay their higher education fees within the first couple of years. We must contrast this with the kind of debt that is visible in the US. $1.77 trillion in student and higher education debt in the US in 2023. And hence, we repeatedly underscore that access through inclusion is a very, very vital part of this journey. I must bring to your notice the role that state public universities have played in this regard. State public universities account for about 80% of the total students in higher education in India. There are about 500 of them. Their primary focus has been ensuring access in the hinterland. And in a report that was released on 10th of February, we have provided a roadmap at Niti on how they should now traverse the journey from access to quality, to excellence, and what will be required in order to move forward in this journey. The third subpart of access is online or digital education. And I think I must highlight the fact here that the information and communication technology explosion that India has witnessed in the last 12 to 15 years has played a very important role in making online and digital education possible. We all witnessed this during COVID, when despite one of the strictest of lockdowns, education, both school and higher, continued to a large extent. Let me highlight before you that in the last 12 odd years, the number of internet users in India has increased 10 times to 93 crores. And the number of smartphone users has increased 25 times to almost the same number. And we have among the cheapest data rates in the world, about rupees 7 per GB. All of this make online education a very wonderful opportunity for universities, for education, upskilling, and reskilling of the enormous working age population that we have, and that must be leveraged in immense measure. The second pillar of the national education policy, which is very vital, is quality. And in quality, we often say, what gets measured gets done. That's true for individuals, that's true for corporations, that's true even for institutions. And rankings play a very important role in providing this measurement. It's a matter of great pride that India is the second Asian nation among the largest universities in the World QS rankings last year. And you must not be aware that it was the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, which had in 2023 in the QS university rankings the highest citations per faculty anywhere in the world, much ahead of Ivy League, much ahead of the Oxbridge ecosystem. That's the kind of achievements we are making, but we are unaware of. I wish to quote Professor Simon Marginson, who was my advisor at Oxford, who said that in the next decade, university rankings will increasingly move in a decentralized format, and countries should have their own university ranking systems. We all must be delighted with the fact that we've been ahead of the curve even on this. Since the last 8 to 9 years, we have our own National Institution Ranking Framework, the NIRF, which ranks universities on parameters relevant to India and the Indian context. And in the last 8 years, we've had a series of sub-specializations that NIRF has focused on to ensure increasing competition among the universities, as diverse as medical, research, engineering, dental, pharmacy, agriculture, and now the latest being state public universities. That ensures that aspirational universities can transition to become leading universities, and leading universities can aspire to become world-class institutions. The second important part of quality is multidisciplinary education. For almost 150 years, and most of us are a part of that story, it's been now 23 years since I graduated from the University of Mumbai. We are all a product of the Macaulayan system where arts, science, and commerce were the three siloed options available. The National Education Policy talks about multidisciplinary education. A recent Harvard Business Review article had stated in big bold letters, engineers must learn philosophy because along with the how, they should also know the why of things. That's the way, that's the direction in which the world is moving in the 21st century. And the National Education Policy has encouraged MERUs, or multidisciplinary education and research universities, which play a very important role in imparting such multidisciplinary education. I often mention that in the 21st century, we need to move from STEM to STEAM 3. We all know what is STEM. What is STEAM 3? Science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics, management, and medicine. This forms the core of the requirements of the 21st century, and it is this STEAM 3 or STEAM Cube which will power the vision of a Viksit Bharat. And it is important that universities transition in this direction. The last pillar of the National Education Policy, which is very vital and where industry and the corporate houses especially can play a very important role, is future readiness. Education, especially higher education, needs to be future ready. And research is the most important component of this future readiness. We are aware of the Anusandhan National Research Foundation, which was announced in the previous budget, about 50,000 crore outlay. And another 1 lakh crore fund was announced for research and development in private sector institutions. And this would cover the entire gamut of technology readiness levels. But it is important to note here that in India, more than 50% investment in research and development comes from central and state governments, of which about 44% is by central government, 6% is by state government. Private sector contributes only 35% of investment in R&D. You compare that with the developed economies in the US or even in China, private sector contributes 75 to 77% of R&D investments. And hence, in the next 20 to 25 years, it will be vital for the private sector to double their contribution to R&D in terms of GDP so that we can progress towards the vision of a Viksit Bharat. Let me highlight this fact that in universities of the developed world. For example, in MIT, its budget is about, annual research budget in 2022 was about $750 million, MIT. Of this, $250 million were contributed by the private sector. That's the kind of academia-industry interface and involvement that has been noticed, that has been popular, that has been successful in the developed countries. In the next 25 years, R&D is expected to rise from 0.7% of GDP to 3.5% of GDP. This means a 5x increase in R&D, but on a much larger base. 0.3% of GDP at about 0.7% of GDP of $3 trillion to 3.5% GDP of $30 trillion. This means a 50x increase in R&D is what the next 25 years will witness. And hence it's very important that universities develop the capacity to absorb this, and industry plays a very important role in engaging with the universities very closely in order to achieve this, utilize and create research output that is impactful and not just textual. The second point in future readiness is innovation and entrepreneurship. Niti is currently undertaking 3 policy research projects in this area: research, innovation, and entrepreneurship at the international, national, and sub-regional levels in order to understand the potential and the roadmap for the next 25 years. But I would like to draw your attention to the Cambridge ecosystem. A recent report by London Economics stated that the economic impact of the University of Cambridge is £30 billion. Of this, £23 billion come from its research and knowledge exchange activities. And for every £1 of research income for University of Cambridge, the impact to the economy of the UK is £12.65. That's the kind of power that a very well-established university ecosystem can have in contributing to the economy. India too has witnessed phenomenal research, innovation, and entrepreneurship in the last 7 to 8 years. From 450 startups, we've moved to 1.5 lakh startups in 2024 and 100 plus unicorns. But there is one fact which is often not discussed in the public. We discuss the valuations. We do not discuss the job creation potential of startups. In a recent article that the mission director of the Atal Innovation Mission, Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, and I co-authored for the Indian Express, we presented there our observations. If 5% of graduates from universities opt for entrepreneurship, and if 90% of them fail, the remaining 10% of them have the potential to create 55 lakh direct and indirect jobs every year. Currently, less than 2% of students are opting for entrepreneurship and startups in the best of Indian institutions. UK has 4%, US has 16%. So if we are able to transform our higher education institutions from the campus placement mindset to the job creation mindset and nurture innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystems in universities, for which corporations can play a very important role in funding, hand-holding, mentorship and advisory, universities and the entrepreneurial ventures coming out of them can play a very important role in creating the jobs that we need to power the economy. Currently, our requirements are 1 crore jobs a year. If 55 lakh of them come from startups in the next decade or so, you can imagine the kind of solutions that we will have to the problems of unemployment or underemployment that we face. Third is internship. We often talk about the disconnect between academia and industry, that students are not deployable. They are not deployable, and hence you need these long induction and training programs. And internship has been identified as a very powerful means to ensure that students are deployable. The NEP talks about the 4-year undergraduate program, of which the last year would be a 1 year of internship. Now let me share the numbers with you. If we are going to have 4 crore students in undergraduate, and if the 4th year, 1 whole year, is going to be internship, We'll have 1 crore students requiring internship. And that means that internship will have to be in the industry. And industry will have to develop the capacity to absorb 1 crore students into the internship programs so that they can be made deployable. The National Internship Portal is one of the latest initiatives in this regard, but the private sector will have to join forces in a substantial measure to make internship a very powerful medium to ensure future readiness. The last part on future readiness is internationalization. We need world-ready talent. The Honorable Prime Minister has been often talking about how Indian talent needs to be world-ready, and there is so much demand for Indian talent the world over. 3% of our students go overseas for higher education. 97% study in India. And it is important that these 97% have exposure of internationalization so that they are world-ready. And I think for this reason, we need to have a dual perspective and priority. One, increasing inward mobility of students from 50,000 currently international students to about 5 lakhs in the next decade. But also to ensure increasing international exposure for our students and faculty. Again, the private sector can play a very important role in ensuring this. We already have our IITs establishing campuses overseas. IIT Madras has recently established a campus in Zanzibar and IIT Delhi in Abu Dhabi, and we'll see more of it in the years ahead. But internationalization is an area, given the massive networks that corporates have across the world, they can play a very important role in enabling our institutions to get internationalized, pedagogy, curriculum, and research. In conclusion, I would like to say that over the last millennium, it was the Oxbridge ecosystem that enabled UK to have its influence across the world. In the last century and more, it was the Ivy League institutions and the institutions of technology such as MIT and Caltech that enabled US to emerge as a superpower both in industry and in technology. And in the last decade or more, it is the universities like Peking and Tsinghua that have enabled China to make great strides in the field of research and development. If India has to become a Viksit Bharat by 2047, if India has to become the global hub of knowledge, if India has to foster innovation and become the startup capital of the world, if India has to have leaders who are noble and able, higher education will have to play a foundational and strategic role so that we can once again regain our glory in the Committee of Nations like we had or we did for almost 2 millennia, where we contributed the maximum to the global GDP, about 25 to 30%. We definitely can rise to become the top 2 economy in the world. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Some heartening words from Dr. Shashank Shah. And sir, we ask that you kindly do join us back on stage. We'd like to felicitate you with a token of our appreciation. If I could please ask Mr. Rohit Chadda to honor us and join us in doing the same. Thank you so much, sir. Truly enjoyed your remarks, as did this audience. Yes. A very special moment. So thank you for gracing the occasion.